Now, this story. Angelo Agrizzi's medical condition could improve if he lost some 50 kilograms. That's the word from Dr. Emmanuel Taban, who examined Agrizzi. Final arguments are being heard in the inquiry to determine his fitness to stand trial. He's facing fraud and corruption charges for a R1 billion tender that was given to Busasa. Manqoba Mchunu is a reporter this afternoon following the proceedings, and he's joining us now just to give us a sense what's been happening there today. Good afternoon, Manqoba. Thanks for joining us on Today this afternoon. So what happened today in the inquiry? What stood out?
Well, but then essentially today it was the closing arguments in the two applications that were brought by the state. You recall, of course, that the issue when it comes to Angelo Agrizzi has been his continued absence from court. I think the last time we saw Angelo Agrizzi appearing in court was in October 2020 when he had been making a bail application to the court at the time. After that, he had fallen sick, and he had not been to any of his court appearances. He has two cases that he needs to answer to. The one involves a 1.8 Busasa tender that was given by the Correctional Services Department back in 2004, and I think from 2004 to 2007. The other matter being the 800 million rand that was paid to ANC MP Vincent Smith and his company, and both those cases has not been appearing in court. And of course, what this case was all about was on the basis that Angelo Agrizzi has not been in court, they were trying to determine whether he's actually fit to stand trial and whether he should not forfeit his bail as a result of his continued absence from court. But today what we saw, Braden, was an agreement between the state as well as the defense on the fact that it was not Angelo Agrizzi's fault that he did not attend these proceedings. Of course, this is after 3 doctors had testified in this particular hearing. One of the doctors that was called by Agrizzi's team testifying to the fact that he not only suffered from physical but also neurological issues, and therefore he was neurologically unfit to stand trial. The state also calling a pulmonologist who testified that Angelo Agrizzi could participate, he could understand the proceedings, what was happening in court, but only if he's given enough time, if the proceedings are held, just for short intervals. And so they've now come to an agreement, Braden, that in fact it was not his fault that he was not in court, and that going forward, Angelo Agrizzi will now have to appear virtually in all of his criminal matters. And this is what the court had ultimately decided, but then giving an order to that effect that Angelo Agrizzi will now have to appear virtually for both his cases. But here's Sindisiwe Sibuka from the NPA's investigating directorate just elaborating on that.
We want to have an indication as to what exactly is happening, and we're now happy that we know that we have an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours each day in order to possession in order to proceed, and him taking breaks in the interim. At the end of the day, we want to prosecute him, and we will not hesitate to prosecute him unless the referral judge in the trial matter decides otherwise. So for us, this is a win.
And in terms of the case going forward, we heard of possible talk of separation of trials. Is this the next step for you as a state?
So what happens now is, after the orders were made by court now and the various deliberations now have to take place, my boss, Advocate Andre Johnson, needs to then be brought up to speed as to what the deliberations in order have been. Then with her discretion and executive team, a decision will then be made. Are we then going to apply for separation, looking at what has happened in the couple of years leading up to this point, or what?
Can you tell us more, Manqoba, about this separation? I mean, what is it all about?
Well, but then with the separation of trial, this has to deal with another application that was before this court. And the application that we're talking about, Braden, is the application that was made by the state, 342A of the Criminal Procedure Act. As far as the delays in the matter have been concerned, of course, you recall, Braden, that Angelo Agrizzi is, charged with other accused in both these matters. And so the argument was that his continued absence from court has been delaying both these matters. So the court, of course, had to also deliberate on whether Angelo Agrizzi needs to undergo a mental evaluation, of course, after the evidence that we've heard from some of the doctors who said that he's not able to process information and that he had suffered brain injury. So the court ruling, but then that at this particular point, Angelo Agrizzi will not have to undergo a mental evaluation. In fact, they've now left it to the trial court to decide specifically on that issue. And this is where the issue of the separation of trials also comes into effect, because the judge had made it quite clear that, you know, when the trials are separated, perhaps this is a matter that the court will have to look into as far as Angelo Agrizzi's mental condition, whether or not he'll be able to understand those proceedings. And so the decision of the court, but then was that they'll leave it to the court, the trial court, to decide on this particular aspect. And of course, given the fact that the state has already indicated that they are planning to separate the trials for Agrizzi to be trialed alone due to his medical conditions. But take a listen to that decision that was given by the court earlier.
We discussed the matter in chambers, myself and the two counsels. And we came to the conclusion that the question of referring Mr. Agrizzi should be raised with a judge that will be hearing the matter when he appears alone, to avoid complications, because if he's referred now, there are so many hindrances, obstacles, hiccups that can happen. Referring an accused person, it's a mammoth task. The bed must be available. It takes sometimes 6 months, 4 months. It is better to deal with such things when the trial has been separated. Counsel for the state intimated to us, to me and to Mr. Witz in chambers, that the trials might be separated.
Okay, that comment there by the judge in this matter of Angelo Agrizzi, ending that update from Manqoba Mchunu.